Yo, what's up? Hey, I came across this while reading it this morning and thought it would be super cool to share. This is out of First Samuel, and been walking slowly through First Samuel, and one of my favorite books and stories, and some of the great stories you've heard of come like really directly from this story, David and Goliath, King Saul. You hear those grand. This is where it's at, and so it starts with the Israelites. They're like, and this is kind of a cliff note, like 3,000 foot view version of this, and then I'll get to the good stuff in a second. But the Israelites, right? They really wanted a king. Like God was supposed to be their king, their ruler, but they rejected God as king and said, no, we really want a king. And so God spoke to his servant Samuel and said, you listen, tell them they don't want that. Because God knew human nature, human existence, the pros and more importantly the cons of the human condition. And God goes, listen, you don't want a king, trust me. But the Israelites said, no, we really want a king. And so God told Samuel, okay, anoint this guy named Saul as king and give him what they want. And because God allows us to make choices and make decisions that he knows aren't in our best interest, but because in our human condition we're really stuck on some things sometimes, and sometimes we just need to walk through and experience the hurt and the pain of the experience to learn from it. So that's why a lot of times God allows us to make really stupid decisions. And they made a really stupid decision, the Israelites, and they really wanted a king, and so they got a king. King's name was Saul, and it was really clear early on that Saul was not their guy. That Saul was not, one of my favorite parts of this. I say favorite, it's not good, but when Saul and Samuel are talking, a lot of times Saul would use this phrase. He would say, I'm doing this for the Lord your God, talking to Samuel. Or, hey, this is, I'm sacrificing these things, these animals for the Lord your God. And Saul made it really clear that, hey, this was Samuel's God. This was not Saul's God. This was Samuel's God. And so it's not, because remember, when Saul said this, he didn't say the Lord my God, the Lord our God. He said, this is the Lord your God when he's talking to Samuel. And so there's a lot of great stuff you can pick out of that. But that's not really where I'm getting at this morning. And so the last straw before God rejected Saul as king was the Amalekites. God told Saul really clearly, like, hey, go and destroy everyone, everything. Like, if it breathes, destroy it. Like, it was really clear instructions from God to Saul. And when Samuel came upon Saul, he realized that not only did Saul not even kill the king of the Amalekites, like he kept him as a hostage. He took all the best animals and he kept it. And when Samuel confronted Saul and said, hey, didn't God tell you to kill like everyone and everything? Saul starts to make excuses, and Saul starts to say, well, I did it because I wanted to sacrifice these to the Lord your God, not the Lord my God, the Lord your God. And Samuel demonstrates this big lesson, and that's, hey, obedience to God is better than religion, is better than sacrifice, right? And so because of that act, because Saul rejected the instructions that the Lord, Samuel's God, gave to him, God rejected Saul as king. And so and this is how savage it gets in a second. So after Samuel hears these excuses from Saul, Samuel tells him, he says, listen, the Lord has rejected you as king. And Saul's repentive, no, just come with me to worship. Hey, he's begging Samuel to, hey, just make it right, make it right. And here's what Samuel does. Samuel goes, grabs a sword, says, bring me the king of the Amalekites. And he chops them to pieces in front of everybody right there. And Saul's on his knees begging for God's forgiveness. And Samuel, just the savage that he is, begins to chop down this king of the Amalekites who should have been killed a long time ago. And then this is my point I'm getting at. I know it has a lot of backstory, but it really is going to help this part of the story. So Samuel begins to mourn for Saul because he loved Saul. He wanted to see Saul succeed. And yet, Saul has been rejected by the Lord. And this is chapter 16, verse 1. It says, the Lord said to Samuel, how long are you going to mourn for Saul? since I have rejected him as king over Israel. He tells Samuel, fill your horn with oil and go. I am sending you to Jesse of Bethlehem because I have selected a king from his sons. And of course, we know that that goes on to be King David. But what's amazing about that is I wonder how long you and I mourn over people that God has removed from our life. That God has said, listen, they're no longer going to help you on this journey. And we mourn, no, bring him back, God, bring him back. Maybe it's a relationship, maybe it's a boyfriend, a girlfriend, maybe it's a best friend who is really really great in a season. Sometimes we can want to clamor and cling on to what God did in a previous season because we just want him back. But the longer we hang on to the past, the longer before we get to our future. If Samuel had just clung on to Saul and said, God, give him another chance, then it would have been that much longer before King David takes over, and we go on to read all that God did through King David. So not sure who that helps this morning, who you're hanging on to, who you need to let go, who you need to go after. Love you.